Not one, but two apologies. This is Wretched Radio. It's getting more and more difficult these days to know the difference between news and fake news. Not just with unbelievers, but inside the church. Things have gotten so bonkers, it's hard to do satire these days, and it's hard to discern when an article is being written with tongue-in-cheek or when it's not. Babylon Bee has actually been taken to task several times. I believe it was MSNBC saying, hey, you need to start putting disclaimers on your articles. Babylon Bee is a satire site. They seem to have expanded their territory, not like Jabez, but they've expanded their territory, not just satirizing things in the church, but things in the world and in politics. My understanding is some politicians, some liberals, are mad at them. Hey, you need to tell people you're actually joking. Why? Because it's hard to tell when it's a joke these days and when it's not. And so it is inside of evangelical Christianity. The other day, reported a story about a pastor in Ghana who said he could bring back Kobe Bryant and his daughter for $50 million. Now, we talked about that and reported the story. Apparently, we're not the only ones who reported some fake news because it was within the realm of credibility. It's absolutely possible that this type of story could happen. And many people fell for it, including us, because we've read similar stories. In fact, we've read far worse stories coming out of the signs and wonders movement that is so unbridled and out of control. These wacky stories in Africa, not just Africa, but even in the West, of pastors who do zany things with their congregation. Some people have actually died from it. The pastor who would step on people and have a bunch of people step on people to squeeze the disease out of them. How's about the pastor who told the congregation their sheep, what do sheep eat? They eat grass. So he shooed them all out the door and they had to eat grass in the front lawn. Not kidding. How's about the pastor who has his people drinking a diluted version of basically petrol to get the disease out of you or something? And those are true stories. So when this pastor came along saying, for $50 million, I'll raise him from the dead, I went, yeah, that's right. That's typical. My apologies, not so. But I think a more important apology would be to you if I unintentionally upset you regarding the issue of taking care of elderly parents. Was reading through 1 Timothy 5, and it is a verse that is a tricky one for us in the West in the 21st century when we have so many options for care for elderly parents. And I had tried in that presentation being mindful that there are different scenarios and different considerations. I tried to be mindful of that, but I don't think I was mindful enough. It turns out that this subject, I think, is one that is similar to talking about prayer and emotional issues. There are some subjects in Christendom that we would all do well to be really, really thoughtful about when we talk about these subjects. Because if you do not present everything holistically, the entire subject, there are people who could be hurt by it. There are people who might say, hey, wait a second, but what about this? And you said that, and it really scalded me. There are some subjects like that. Talk about depression and talk about how the Bible has the power to give you joy. And you will receive a notice from somebody, as I have in the past, which is why I try to be mindful of it. Hey, what about medication? It's really helped me. When I didn't mention anything, any sort of nota bene about medication. And it turned out that somebody who's taking medication, it is actually helping them in their situation. And it turns out they are one of the exceptions to the rule where it is needed. They didn't hear anything about medication. They just heard the Bible has the power to give somebody joy, and they felt like they were being attacked. Now, we all know that you cannot put little asterisks on everything you say. Otherwise, frankly, we'd hardly be able to have a conversation. Nevertheless, I think there are some subjects that we just need to be thoughtful about when we talk about them. And it turns out, lesson learned for me, talking about taking care of elderly parents is one of those issues. I won't read through them because many of them are personal. I'll just summarize them. A lot of the emails in response to me talking about 1 Timothy 5 saying, I think we need to rethink it. That's as strong as I got. I think we need to rethink this. I did not make a blanket statement. Every single child of an elderly parent must take care of them in every situation. I didn't say that. Nevertheless, let me explain what I think could be some exceptions to what I think we are given is a rule. We can't escape that. When it comes to an issue that confronts us, that can be a personal challenge for us, our attitude should be, I want to obey. Not, how can I find a way out of this? It doesn't mean that you might not find a way out of it, but it does mean that our heart and our attitude should be, I want to try to obey as best I can. That should be our starting place. 1 Timothy 5, it's tough for us in the West. Honor widows who are really widows. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. Tried to stress that this is something that needs to be reconsidered on the part of children and parents. Children have a tendency to not want to do this. Parents have a tendency to not want it to be done for them. And I think both parties need to reconsider the blessing that is available to both ends of the spectrum because it's pleasing to God. And if it's pleasing to God, it must be pleasing to us. That was my encouragement. Nevertheless, my apologies if it felt like I was insensitive on the deal. Wasn't trying to be. Let's get back to the text. Now, she who is really a widow and left alone trusts in God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. So this is a widow who is godly. But she who lives in pleasures is dead while she lives. All these things command that they may be blameless. But if anyone does not provide for his own family, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That seems pretty ironclad, doesn't it? And I don't think that we should try to water that down. So how can we say there might be exceptions? I think that there could be some to this with mutual agreement. Many people sent me an email saying, I physically can't take care of the physical needs of my mom or dad. I don't think there's anything wrong with enlisting care in an assisted care facility. I don't remember, laws are made for people. People aren't made for laws. And if a law like this isn't good for both parties, then you don't apply the law. It wouldn't be good for a mom who can't be taken care of by a son or daughter or both. That's not good for them because of a malady that's so difficult and so challenging, and it might actually be better. What about the number of people who said, you don't understand how awful my parents are? Now, this is where it can get a little bit dicey. Would I be quick to go, oh, it's kind of difficult, then don't worry about it? I wouldn't go that fast. But could it be in some situations where there is somebody who is so abusive, somebody who is so nasty that you have to protect your own family from your parents? And I think the answer to that is yes, because we do have that responsibility. How do you know if that's the case? Well, it's not easy. And I think that's the power of the local church being involved in your life to help you make decisions like that. I don't think that we should run to that as the first out. I think that should be the last out. And the overall attitude should be, how can I obey this commandment? How can I do this? And the decision, it should be one that is more difficult than, look, they can just spend the money on the retirement. Let them just go. They want to go there. I think that can be an option. But I think that we need to consider the command that Paul gives us via God, from God, that it's pleasing when we take care of our parents, and it should be our desire to do so because it pleases God, and I want to be pleasing to him. So in this entire conversation, I think much to be learned. And other emails that I received that were helpful, by the way, there needs to be a mutual respect going on. A lot of people are like, oh, my parents, they don't respect me, and I try to take care of them. And hey, mom and dad, that needs to stop. If you want to use Ephesians 6 to say that they still need to honor me by taking care of me, or 1 Timothy 5, so be it, but you can't make them nuts either. And it's their house, and you would do well to support them, submit to their rules, and be a good house guest. So it needs to be a mutual sort of affair. All that to say, my apologies if I stepped on your toes by being inconsiderate. Wasn't trying to. Don't want to make a blanket statement or law where there isn't a law in every single case, but I would stand by these verses and suggest we all need to take a closer look at this in an effort to be pleasing to God. This is Wretched Radio.